Welcome to the future.
Welcome to 1337, the future of podcasts of longevity. I'm Max, your host, exploring the science of living longer.
And I'm Sophia, diving into health hacks and ageless living tips. We're here to uncover the secrets to a vibrant, extended life, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And today, we're going deep on the ideas and methods of Wim Hof.
The Iceman.
Yeah, the Iceman himself. We're drawing on his interview on The Diary of a CEO that so many of you wanted to hear more about.
You guys were really curious about Hof's approach and what it all means. So we wanted to take a deep dive into his core principles and really unpack what makes his methods tick.
Right. I mean, the guy ran up Everest in his underwear. That's just insane.
It is pretty mind-blowing. But it really speaks to his whole philosophy of pushing those limits of what we think is humanly possible, mentally and physically. So what are we waiting for? Let's get into it.
Okay, so starting right at the heart of it all, what would you say is Hof's main driving force? His core mission?
Well, he actually lays it out pretty simply. He wants to bring love and power to the world.
Love and power. Okay, I'm intrigued.
But here's the thing. He's really adamant that it needs to be backed by science. So he's not just talking about some vague, feel-good concept. He sees science as the foundation for achieving greater happiness, strength, and health for everyone. So it's this interesting blend of a really humanistic goal with a very strong emphasis on scientific validation.
That's a powerful combination. But how does he see the current state of things, in relation to this mission of his?
Well, he's pretty upfront about his view that modern society is kind of sick.
Kick, huh? In what way?
He points to a few things. He talks about the just crazy levels of stress that so many of us are dealing with constantly, the way consumerism has just taken over everything, and maybe most importantly, this deep disconnect we have from our own bodies. We're so in our heads all the time or glued to screens that we've lost touch with our physical selves.
That's a huge point. I mean, how many of us are actually in tune with what our body is telling us? Yeah. It's like we're living in our minds and neglecting the physical vessel.
Exactly. And that's a big part of what he's trying to address. He has this vision that ideally every mother should be empowered to bring happiness, strength, and health to her children, which I think is a beautiful idea. And this is where the science comes back in. He's very passionate about using research to validate what he initially understood intuitively, especially when it comes to the power of the cold.
So he's not just relying on anecdotal evidence or personal experience.
Not at all. He's all about the data. Which brings us to his critique of modern society. He has some pretty strong opinions about how we're living today.
Lay it on me. What are his main gripes?
Well, he argues that society has become so unbelievably complex that we've basically lost track of what's actually causing our problems.
It's like we're so overwhelmed by all the moving parts that we can't see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And he finds it pretty ironic that despite all our incredible technological advancements, we've landed on the moon, we're creating AI, we're still struggling with the most basic elements of well-being. Happiness, strength, health. These things should be a given, right? But it seems like we're further away from them than ever.
It's almost like we've advanced externally, but regressed internally.
That's a great way to put it. He believes our consciousness has become narrowed, focused on the wrong things. We're constantly chasing external sources of happiness, our careers, our possessions, money, instead of cultivating the inner resources that are already there.
We're looking for fulfillment in all the wrong places.
Yeah, and he thinks this has a lot to do with the fact that life has become so comfortable, so easy. We've lost the need to tap into those deeper levels of our brain, the parts that deal with resilience and survival. We've basically outsourced our toughness.
Comfort is the enemy of growth. That's a pretty thought-provoking concept. I can see how it could lead to a kind of complacency.
That's his point. We've become so used to this constant state of comfort that we're ill-equipped to handle the inevitable discomforts and stress that life throws our way. It's like we've lost our natural ability to adapt and overcome challenges.
So how did Hof himself arrive at these insights? Where did this whole journey begin for him?
Well, it's interesting. He actually traces it back to his birth. He had a very traumatic birth experience. He was a near-suffocated, unexpected twin. He actually describes it as the trigger for his lifelong seeker mentality.
Wow. I can't imagine what that must have been like. It sounds like a pretty rough start.
It was. And then at the age of 17, he had this really profound experience that kind of solidified his path. He was in Amsterdam, and he just intuitively felt drawn to jump into a freezing cold lake.
He just jumped in. No hesitation.
Apparently not. He described it as feeling like he was meeting his trauma head on, activating some deep inner capacity to process things that his conscious mind couldn't handle. It was like the cold was this catalyst that unlocked something primal within him.
That's incredible. So his initial reaction to the cold wasn't about feeling powerful or in control, but more about confronting something difficult.
Exactly. He's talked about how different that initial experience was from the mastery he developed later on. That first plunge was more about a visceral encounter with something deeply unsettling.
So this brings us to the power of cold exposure that he talks about so much. What's the main principle behind it?
It's actually pretty simple. He believes that by consciously choosing to expose ourselves to the cold, which he sees as this aggressive force, we're actually training ourselves to deal with problems before they arise. It's like a preemptive strike against stress and illness. We're building up resilience by willingly facing discomfort.
So instead of avoiding discomfort, we're embracing it as a way to become stronger.
Exactly. And he explains it in terms of brain function. When we go into the cold, it bypasses our thinking brain, that overactive neocortex, and taps into the deepest, most primitive part of our brain, a brainstem.
So it's about accessing a more primal level of our being.
That's it. And he links us back to his idea that our modern comfort is actually preventing us from reaching these deeper levels of resilience. The cold becomes this powerful stimulus that forces us to connect with that primal strength.
That's fascinating. And it's not just theoretical. He has some pretty compelling real-world examples of this in action.
Oh yeah, tons. He talked about Patrice Evra, the footballer, who used cold water immersion to help him deal with childhood trauma. It was like the cold helped him access and process those deep-seated emotional wounds. And then there's the story of the 76-year-old with Lyme disease who climbed Kilimanjaro with Hof in record time. It's like proof that we have this incredible untapped potential within us.
So where does someone even begin if they want to explore this potential? What's the first step?
Breathing. Breathing exercises are absolutely key. He stresses that they're the foundation for learning to handle emotions and feeling in control.
Okay, but how can breathing be so powerful? We do it all the time without even thinking about it.
It's not just about breathing. It's about breathing consciously and with a specific technique. He actually references this groundbreaking study from 2014 that showed that you can actually consciously influence your autonomic nervous system, things like heart rate, digestion, and even your immune system through breathing. Before that, scientists thought these systems were totally beyond our control.
Wow. That's a huge paradigm shift.
It is. So what does the breathing actually look like? It's pretty simple. You take these deep, full inhalations, filling your belly and chest, and then you just let the air passively flow out. You repeat this for a certain number of rounds.
Deep in, relaxed out. Got it. What kinds of effects can someone expect to feel?
You might experience lightheadedness or tingling. That's mostly from the reduction of carbon dioxide in your body. You're basically energizing your system and changing your blood chemistry, raising your pH levels.
So it's actually shifting our internal environment in measurable ways.
Yes. And then comes the breath hold. After you exhale completely, you hold your breath for as long as you comfortably can. This is where things get really interesting.
Breath holding can be a little intimidating for some people.
I know, but trust me, it's not about pushing yourself to the point of discomfort. It's about exploring your limits safely. During the breath hold, you might feel increased blood flow to your brain and heart. You're also activating your parasympathetic nervous system, that's the rest and digest part of your nervous system. Some people even report feeling emotional releases during this phase.
So physical and emotional benefits all from holding your breath.
Exactly. And then you take a full inhale and sometimes press the breath up toward your head.
What's the point of that?
It's thought to help circulate cerebrospinal fluid, which can further enhance things in your brain. But one really important caveat, always do these exercises in a safe environment. You don't want to be driving or swimming or anything where a little dizziness could be dangerous.
Safety first, absolutely.
Right. And he's pointed out that cardiologists have actually observed increased blood flow to the brain and heart after these breath holds. Plus, as we said, you're actually changing your blood chemistry, bypassing your body's normal trigger to breathe. It's pretty wild.
It is. So this brings us to the connection between all of this and trauma. He talks about how trauma can actually be stored in the body.
Yes, this is a really important concept. He believes that traumas aren't just psychological wounds that live in our minds. They can also get trapped in our bodies as unprocessed biochemistry. It's like our tissues hold on to the emotional residue of those experiences.
So it's not just about the memories we carry in our minds, but also the imprints left on our physical being.
Exactly. And because of that, he believes that our conditioned minds and bodies often can't access these deep-seated traumas through just thinking or talking about them. We need something more direct, something that can bypass our conscious control.
It's like those traumas are locked away in a vault, and we need the right key to open it.
That's a great analogy. And he sees the breath as that key. By consciously changing our breathing patterns, we can potentially tap into those deeper layers where the trauma is stored and bring it to the surface where it can finally be processed and released.
So the breath becomes this powerful tool for healing.
That's the idea. He even points to a study by a professor in Detroit that found that these breathing exercises activate cannabinoid receptors in the brain. These receptors are part of what's called the salient network, which helps regulate our mood and connect different parts of the brain.
Cannabinoid receptors, that's pretty amazing.
Right. So there's actually a neurological basis for the profound effects of this breathing. And it's interesting because he contrasts this natural approach with traditional psychiatry, which often relies on medication. He's pretty critical of that approach, especially based on his experiences with his late wife.
He felt like the medication wasn't addressing the root cause of the problem.
That was his experience. And he makes the point that his method, while it's simple and effective, doesn't exactly make Big Pharma happy.
Yeah, I can see how that could be an issue. If there's no money to be made, there's less incentive to research and promote it.
Exactly. But the research that has been done shows some really impressive results. For example, studies have shown that Hof's method can improve interoception. That's basically your ability to sense and interpret the signals coming from your body, like your heartbeat, your gut feelings, your emotions.
So it's about becoming more tuned in to what's happening internally.
Exactly. And that's a huge part of his whole philosophy, which brings us to the power of the mind.
This is where it all comes together.
Right. He believes that through consistent practice of his methods, the breathing and the cold exposure, you start to override those negative patterns that are holding you back. You're essentially forging a new relationship between your mind and your body, one that's based on conscious control and empowerment.
It's like we're upgrading our operating system.
I love that analogy. And as a result of this upgraded system, you gain access to this new cognitive terrain, as he calls it. You develop a much stronger sense of interoception, and you learn how to regulate your emotions and bodily sensations instead of being controlled by them.
We become the masters of our internal domain.
Precisely. He even talked about a study that compared his method to meditation and mindfulness. And it actually showed that his method was more effective in terms of stress resilience, stress experience, and cognitive awareness.
So this isn't just some woo-woo feel-good stuff.
Yeah.
There's real science backing it up.
Absolutely. And he's very passionate about the idea that this capacity for self-regulation should be taught from a young age. He sees it as crucial for fostering personal responsibility and empowering people to take control of their own well-being.
So we move away from a victim mentality and step into our own power.
Exactly. And he emphasizes that this power is something we all have. It's innate. He uses the example of the cold to illustrate this. When you learn to control your body's response to the cold, it creates this domino effect in other areas of your life. You realize that you're capable of overcoming challenges that you once thought were insurmountable.
So let's talk about how Hof actually walks the walk. What does his daily routine look like?
Well, he's all about starting the day strong. He wakes up early, exercises, often pushing himself to the edge of his comfort zone to really tune in to his body's signals.
So it's not just about going through the motions, but really being present in the experience.
Exactly. He's also a big fan of coffee, but black, no sugar. And he often practices intermittent fasting, only eating when he's truly hungry.
So he's really in tune with his body's natural rhythms and cues.
Absolutely. He's actually pretty critical of the whole idea that we need 3 meals a day. He sees it as this societal construct that goes against our natural instincts. He thinks we should be more like animals in that sense, eating when we're actually hungry.
Makes sense. We've definitely become conditioned to eat on a schedule, regardless of whether our body is actually asking for food.
Right. And he also believes that the demands of modern life, the 9-to-5 grind, the constant pressure to achieve, can really drain our energy and prevent us from living in alignment with our true purpose.
So he sees his methods as a way to reclaim that energy and reconnect with what truly matters.
Exactly. He believes that happiness, strength, and health are the ultimate goals. Everything else flows from there. And he makes it clear that his exercise routine isn't about spending hours in the gym. It's about quality over quantity, short bursts of intense effort.
He definitely seems to have a less is more approach to fitness.
He does, and his final message is really empowering. He wants people to understand that they have so much more power than they realize.
Especially those of us who are feeling trapped in the daily grind.
Yes, exactly. He says that the greatest wealth anyone can have is happiness, strength, and health, and that those things are achievable for everyone. His final thought, which is so perfectly him, was, rest is bullshit. Just be happy, strong, and healthy. I love that.
It's a bold statement, but it's also really inspiring. So let's recap the key takeaways from our deep dive into Wim Hof's methods.
We've explored the incredible power of conscious breathing as a way to influence our physiology, the surprising benefits of cold exposure, and the often overlooked power of the mind to overcome limitations and create lasting well-being.
And we hope this deep dive has given you some food for thought. Maybe it's inspired you to explore these ideas further and see how they can enhance your own life and your own journey toward longevity.
There's a whole world of information out there about the Wim Hof Method and the science behind it. We encourage you to check it out.
Visit 1Train37podcast.com for more resources on the future of longevity.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Strength and honor, I am Spartacus.
Strength and honor, I am Spartacus.
Thanks for watching. Tap into 1337podcast.com.